Did Prophet Muhammad really exist? Who was he, historically speaking? These questions might sound strange to many Muslims, for whom the Prophet Muhammad is the most central and undeniable figure in history. But in academic discussions, scholars often ask such questions, not to deny faith, but to study history critically, using evidence and historical methods. So in this video, we are going to explore this question in a neutral, unbiased, and academic way. Did Prophet Muhammad exist? And who was Muhammad, according to both religious tradition and historical research? First of all, why this question? When we ask, did Muhammad exist? It's not because there is serious doubt among most historians. The vast majority of scholars, whether they are Muslim, Christian, secular, or otherwise, agree that Muhammad was a real historical person who lived in 6th to 7th century Arabia. However, some revisionist historians in the late 20th century raised questions about whether we can be certain about Muhammad's life as presented in the Islamic tradition. They pointed out that the earliest detailed biographies of Muhammad were written more than a century after his death, and that non-Muslim sources from the 7th century mention Muhammad only briefly. So the purpose of this question is not to cast doubt, but to investigate. What do we actually know? What are the sources? And what is agreed upon? And what remains debated? To understand Muhammad, we first need to understand the world he lived in. Arabia in the 6th century was a mix of tribal societies, trade routes, and religious diversity. Arabia was not a centralized empire. Instead, it was made up of tribes, each with its own loyalties and customs. There were many pagan practices, with tribes worshipping various gods and idols. At the same time, Christianity and Judaism had a presence in Arabia, especially in the north and Yemen. Some people were also known as Hanifs or monotheists, who rejected idolatry but did not fully identify with Judaism or Christianity. The city of Mecca, where Muhammad was born, was a commercial hub. The Quraysh tribe, Muhammad's tribe, managed trade caravans and also controlled the Kaaba, a major religious shrine that attracted pilgrims. This was the environment in which Muhammad was born around the year 570 CE. When we study Muhammad historically, we need to look at the sources. There are two main categories, Islamic and non-Islamic sources. Under the Islamic sources, first of all, we have the Qur'an, which is the earliest Islamic text and is considered by Muslims to be the word of God revealed to Muhammad. For historians, the Qur'an is valuable because it dates close to Muhammad's lifetime. However, it does not contain a detailed biography. It gives glimpses of events and debates Muhammad faced, but not a chronological life story. Hadiths are reports about what Muhammad said and did. Collections of Hadith were compiled in the 9th century, more than 200 years after Muhammad. While they contain rich detail, historians approach them cautiously because of the time gap and possible political influences. Sira literature are the biographies of Prophet Muhammad, the most famous being by Ibn Ishaq in the 8th century. His work survives through later edits, especially by Ibn Hisham. These biographies give us the narrative of Muhammad's life, from his birth, prophethood, struggles in Mecca, migration to Medina, battles, treaties, and death. Then we have non-Islamic sources. These are also references to Muhammad in external writings. A Syriac chronicle from the 630s mentions a leader of the Arabs named Muhammad. An Armenian historian, Sevios, writing around 660 CE, refers to Muhammad as a merchant who taught about the God of Abraham. Later Byzantine and Christian writers also mention Muhammad and the rise of Islam, though often with misunderstandings. These sources confirm that a man named Muhammad existed and was recognized as a leader of a new religious movement in Arabia during the 7th century. So did Muhammad exist? The consensus among modern historians is yes. The evidence both from the Islamic and non-Islamic sources make it very likely that Muhammad was a real historical figure. However, historians debate details of his life. For example, what exactly happened in Mecca before the migration? How reliable are the battle reports? Did later generations of Muslims reshape the story to emphasize certain points? Some revisionist historians like Patricia Crone and Michael Cook in their book Hegerism argued that we cannot fully trust Islamic sources written later. They suggest that early Islam may have looked different from the traditional story. However, many of their extreme claims have been criticized, and most scholars today accept that while the sources must be studied critically, they still preserve authentic memories of Muhammad's life. In short, while the details are debated, the existence of Muhammad is not seriously questioned by most experts. Now let's ask the second question. Who was Muhammad? According to Islamic tradition, Muhammad was born in Mecca around 570 CE in the Quraysh tribe. His father died before he was born and his mother died when he was young, making him an orphan. He grew up under the care of his grandfather and then his uncle Abu Talib. As a young man, he worked as a trader and became known for his honesty, earning nickname Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy. At the age of 25, he married Khadija, a wealthy merchant widow, and they had children together. Around the age of 40, while meditating in a cave near Mecca, Muhammad received his first revelation. Muslims believe that the angel Gabriel conveyed the words of God to him. These revelations continued for the next 23 years and were eventually compiled into the Qur'an. Muhammad began preaching monotheism, calling people to abandon idol worship, care for the poor, and live morally. His message challenged the Quraysh's religious and economic power, leading to opposition, mockery, and persecution of his followers. The migration to Medina, also known as Hijrah. In 622 CE, Muhammad and his followers migrated to Medina. This event, known as the Hijrah, marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. In Medina, Muhammad became not only a spiritual leader but also a political and military leader. Muhammad built a community of Muslims, establishing laws, agreements, and alliances. He and his followers engaged in battles with the Quraysh, including Badr, Uhud, and the Battle of the Trench. Eventually, Muhammad and the Quraysh signed the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. In 630 CE, Muhammad and his followers peacefully entered Mecca, and the Kaaba was cleansed of idols. Within 2 years, much of Arabia had accepted Islam. Muhammad died in 632 CE in Medina at the age of around 62. From a historian's perspective, Muhammad was a religious reformer and charismatic leader who united much of Arabia under a new monotheistic faith. He was likely deeply influenced by the monotheistic ideas of Judaism and Christianity, but offered a distinct Arabian expression of monotheism. He created a sense of community which is known as Ummah. His leadership combined spiritual, social, and political authority. Even historians who do not accept the divine aspect of Muhammad's revelations acknowledge his impact as one of the most influential figures in history. Regardless of faith perspectives, Muhammad's impact is undeniable. He is considered by Muslims to be the final prophet of God and Islam today has over 1.9 billion followers worldwide. His teachings shaped Arabic language, literature, law, and philosophy. The Islamic community that began under Muhammad expanded into empires, sciences, and civilizations that influenced the world. Even non-Muslim historians often rank Muhammad among the most influential people in human history. Michael Hart, in his famous book The 100, listed Muhammad as number 1, noting his combined religious and secular leadership. So did Prophet Muhammad exist? Yes, overwhelmingly. Historians agree that he was a real person who lived in 6th to 7th century Arabia. Who was Muhammad? For Muslims, he is the final messenger of God, a model of life and character. For historians, he was a remarkable religious and political leader who transformed Arabia and left an impact on world history that continues to this day. The details of his life may be debated, but his existence and influence are among the few things that historians, regardless of belief, agree upon. And that is what makes Muhammad not only a central figure in Islam, but also a central figure in the study of world history. Thank you for watching. If you would like to see more more neutral academic explorations of world religions, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and share your thoughts in the comments. I've also made a similar video on Jesus. You can check that also. This is World Religions, Different Faiths, One Destination.